We got lights. Got lights. Share your. Click this button to share your browser tab. What button are they talking about? Oh, share screen. Share screen. Huh. This is interesting. Um, I don't know what this is. So I'm just getting this instruction right quick from YouTube. I need to spend more time with that. Not now. Um, welcome back. Welcome back to the University of Ghost. My name is Ghost. My name is Elrico Ramon also. And this is in conjunction with Normal LOL. NormalLOL.com is the blog. Normal LOL, the podcast. iTunes, Apple, Spotify, Blueberry, a lot of places you can find. You can't miss it. So this is a continuation, excuse me, a continuation of my abstract lecture series on mental illness. Mental illness is not real for Black people. Maybe mental illness is not real for Black people, and this is I'm kind of thinking about going back and forth between using another platform also because I want to be able to share screens as I have to read off my phone for this. So I hope this is not disturbing you, but if it is, you'll be all right. This is continuing from the shaman and schizophrenia revisited, and just a really quick intro as I've already discussed in the other ones, especially the first part of this series. Why are we having this discussion? Why is this discussion? Why is this discussion so critical, so important? And it just really comes down to one thing: controlling the narrative of your identity, controlling the narrative of your words, your language, how you view reality through your lens as it pertains to the construct and architecture of words and the construct and architecture of your thoughts and how you go about creating and building realities and envisioning who you are and why you are who you are and where you come from and how did you get there. You know what I'm saying? So to be able to control the narrative centers on you being able to control language and control how things are ingested. And, control how it feels to you based upon who you really are in all full transparency and authenticity. So you want to be able to control the narrative of your thoughts, to control the narrative of your language, control the narrative of your dietary practices, your educational practices, your philosophies and spirituality concepts, you know? And that starts with identifying what's right and what's wrong and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Now, I'm giving you just examples of what these altered states and mood disorders and various conditions look like in certain cultures around the world. As we've just started on just this particular series, we kicked it off with Ghana in particular, and beyond it being a concept that's Eastern or ancient Western from an indigenous point of view, focus on the fact that I'm talking about how certain cultures view these things from a leader perspective, from a shamanistic perspective, from a tribal or ancestral veneration perspective. Like there's so many perspectives with how these people view these altered states or mood disorders, also known as mental illnesses. So is mental illness, is it an illness? Is it real? Not for black people. Maybe. So let's go back to a continuation. Again, this is coming out of ResearchGate, and this is the Shaman and Schizophrenia Revisited. This lady, Vivian Zakoto, I'm pretty much feeling highly compelled to get her on the podcast. I haven't reached out to her yet, but I'm kind of just like, man, it's such a very well written study that it's like, yeah, I think I'm going to have her on, and it'll be video, it'll be posted, and that'll also be in conjunction with this series also. Cash App $ El Rico Ramon. Don't be shady. Bless the professor, Professor Ghost. I'm gonna start this particular episode off with the conclusion actually, because I'm basically gonna wrap this particular article, this particular study up, and we're going to go to the next study, as that will be part 4 of mental illness is not real for Black people, as we continue to dismantle and decolonize these words and these languages and stuff like that. And actually, maybe before I get to that, I think we're going to go through the origins of these words. I've done that in little snippets here and there on my other platforms like IG and stuff like that. But I think it's time to like just do a heavy deep dive into like who are these people, these organizations, APA, for example. Um, uh, what was it? The something 13. Anyways, Medical 203. Medical 203 is the predecessor of the DSMs. DSMs. Remember what DSMs are? I know you like. Do you remember this time? I don't know. Okay, all right. I'm gonna try it. DSMs, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Illness Disorders. Did I get it right? I think I got it right. Oh man, I think I got it right this time. We're gonna make sure though. DSM, DSM. I don't like saying stuff I don't know. I don't know if I got good internet service where I'm at right now. It's no big deal. We'll move on. We will move on. Yeah. So let me look it up. Ooh, it's taking a long time. Or do I have it somewhere else? Yeah, let's go ahead and just continue. We'll move on. I don't want to keep you waiting. I know you got things to do. So, man, I gotta get way over here. I gotta get way over here. Wow. I might have been on. I don't even know where I put the page at now. Hold on a second. Let me find the page. Where was I? There we go. Yeah. I'm gonna look up DSM right here because I don't like not knowing. I want to make sure that I'm saying this word right. DSM labels and it doesn't say what it is right there either. Diagnostic. Oh my gosh. Let's go to Wikipedia. Let's just go to Wikipedia. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Yeah, I was right. That's what I said. Okay. All right. Let's stop playing around. All right. Back to the lecture at hand. Conclusion. Some decades ago, there was a famous anthropological dispute about insight and cure. In Medusa's Hair, I'm assuming this is the book, 1981, this individual who was psychoanalytically oriented described Sinhalese priestesses who had abandoned their human husbands in order to be possessed by a god. As a mark of his acceptance of their devotion, their god gave them matted locks that sometimes rose above their heads like a cobra. Excuse me. The possessions were in many ways ecstatic, but the locks were itchy, and their new role as priestess forced them to give up many comforts. Obayasakere thought that the women were drawn to this god and the matted locks he bestowed because they had intense unconscious conflicts around their sexuality, and their practice helped them to recognize and negotiate those conflicts through cultural symbols. He called this the work of culture. Melford Spiro, who was a psychoanalytically oriented, vehemently disagreed. who was also psychoanalytically oriented, vehemently disagreed. He thought that these women were psychotic and beyond repair, except perhaps by means of prolonged psychiatric intervention. At the heart of the dispute lay the question of whether someone must be able to name their emotional conflict explicitly before true cure is possible. To Spiro, these women needed insight, not images. I'm gonna read that last part one more time. Thought that was pretty slightly profound. One more time. He thought that these women were psychotic and beyond repair, except perhaps by means of prolonged psychiatric intervention. At the heart of the dispute lay the question of whether someone must be able to name their emotional conflict explicitly before true cure is possible. To Spiral, these women needed insight, not images. That's interesting. I already know, I don't even need to look up Spyro to know who he is and what he is, right? Because when it comes to what I've read before regarding some um, African traditional practices, some as it pertains to education, it actually is highly predicated upon symbolism, right? Highly predicated upon symbolism as opposed to words. Um, you know, yeah, my debate and argument regarding exactly that was just said is that sometimes that's the issue. I had this interview I did with oh, I can't remember her name. I can't remember her name. But this interview I did with this young lady, and in the midst of the interview, like we found ourselves, or she in particular found herself, and at times myself, having difficulty articulating, expressing a word, not because we didn't know a word or couldn't find the word and its definition, because there are just words, there are things that that exist beyond English language, that exist beyond this tongue, this language that was given to us. Um, and they're not words that are what's necessary to define. It was, at the end of the day, it was like, man, there's sounds, there's emotions, there's body movements, there's facial movements, you know, facial reactions, one-on-one facial reactions. I can look at my dog and give a facial reaction. I can look at my dog and give a movement, give a signal. You know what I'm saying? I can make a sound. Huh. I can give sounds and stuff like. I'm just using a dog as an example. I'm also making a very, very, very critical point that when you're given words and those words are defined for you, that's where the conditioning starts. That's where the repetition of words and the repetition of frequency begins, and that's where your subconscious begins to become trained, or your conscious becomes trained. Subconscious generally remembers a lot of stuff. Even from before you was born. If you believe these things to be true regarding a cyclical nature of existence and reincarnation and reality and stuff like that. But yeah, we are different. Melanated people, we are different. And even within the realm of being melanated, we are all different. We've always been a highly non-monolithic culture of people. But melanated people are different from other people. And when it comes to certain words and labels and groups and stuff like that, they either they don't belong on us, with us, or we don't belong in those groups. Um, there was this posting there was this posting by somebody on IG like a year or so ago that talked about this is kind of X-rated, so I'm not going to actually say what it is, but let's just say it talked about an action performed by uh, a woman, right? And after listening to you know the posting, I remember writing and commenting on the posting. I was like, I don't know if this is I don't know if this is melanated women. I think this might be European women, But that's the point I'm trying to make. Like it's like you have this perspective and this narrative that's given to you, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is universal. and then you just subscribe to it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's probably what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, or whatever. And it's like, no, you're no, you are you, first of all, and you come from a different tribe, second of all, and you come from a different galaxy, probably, third of all. You're different. You're different. So a lot of these things have to be taken into consideration as it pertains to controlling the narrative of how you think and how you speak to one another and what you ingest, because keep in mind too, when it comes to education, as the etymology, and I want to give a shout out to Baba Kwame Sunhorse, who really put me onto this etymology. I don't know if it's gonna let me look this up because my internet's running slow right here, but let's see. Education etymology. And while it's pulling up, oh, it pulled up right away. Good. Excuse me. Education. To educate. 1530s. No, I'm sorry. I want to do educate. There we go. There we go. Educate, mid 15th century, bring up, to train, past particle, bring up, rear, educate, French, blah 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 blah. There we go. That's what I want to look at. Educere. 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 Bring out, lead forth, from, out of, to lead out of. PIE, Proto Indo European root, DEUK, to lead, meaning provide schooling. Educare, educere, to bring out of. Baba Kwame Sunhorse put me on to the word education and its origins and etymology, and what he was expressing beyond the realm of thought and imagination was education is not supposed to be about pouring into you and forcing things down your throat and system in order to alter your mind, alter your genetics. Education is supposed to be able to reconnect you to who you are, who you've always been, and what's been inside of you forever and ever and a day, and to bring it out of you, to lead out. All right. Yeah. So that's my problem. That's one of my one of my issues with labels and words and stuff like that, is that you got to take hold of these things. Let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. How long are we at? We are at about almost 20 minutes. So yeah, we probably ain't going 30 minutes a day. Maybe. Maybe. Unless you just like hearing me talk. Uh, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. These women needed insight, not images. Melanated people need images because mental illness is not real for black people. Maybe. In a brilliant article, Bambi Chapin, who also worked in Sri Lanka, argued that these women were so much conflicted as traumatized, in parentheses, that indeed there was abundant evidence for their trauma. She pointed out that psychiatric science understood that people who had been traumatized often disassociated uncontrollably, and that the psychotherapeutic treatment of trauma often involved repeatedly putting patients into trance to, in effect, teach them how to control their dissociative episodes. Mhm. She pointed out that observers often disagreed about the truth of the memories these patients presented, but agreed that the management of the dissociative state was crucial, and that control of the state helped patients to become an excuse me, and that control of the state helped patients to come to a new understanding of their lives. Excuse me. Chapin thought that neither the Western patient nor the Sinhalese priestess had insight, but both repeatedly practiced going in and out of trance in a way that helped them to manage their trauma and led them to more positive life experiences. In this telling, both Western psychotherapy and Sinhalese spirit possession were examples of the work of culture. Chapin's article was a powerful endorsement of the importance of cultural practice over clinical insights. This got me to thinking about how I would, especially in the beginning phases, when I would look up certain things on the different eras, the sliver of eras, regarding mental health, mental illness practices, treatments, remedies, causes, effects, et cetera, et cetera. And you have ancient, right, which is usually Kemet, Egypt, Kush, Ethiopia, Sumeria, Babylon, Rome, Greece. You have these different eras. And then you come to the medieval times, right? And you have these horrific treatments, just, yeah, all the way from trephining, I think, drilling a hole in the head. That goes back to ancient times. Electroconvulsions, among many other things. Just, yeah, it's one where they would swing you from a chair. Man, it was wild, man. It was some wild stuff going on. And then finally it hit me, reading all this medieval torture and these medieval remedies and treatments and stuff like that, that never once did I see anything regarding medieval information in South America or medieval information in Australia concerning the Aborigines, or what was going on regarding medieval treatment in Trinidad, Jamaica, Mexico, all these different places. And I was like, oh, okay. The one who writes the story, his story. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you get caught up in these things. These individuals go to school and you learn and you get forced. No, I don't say forced, but you get stuff thrown at you from a Euro colonized perspective. You don't get the full plate. You don't get all the ingredients. You don't get everything that was going. You get a few things that was going on. So when it comes to, diagnosing people and prognosis and different evaluations and analytics and stuff like that and observations, like you're not even observing people with the full lens. You're observing people with this skewed perspective based upon what you learned. You know, I did an interview on that too with the lady on Normal LOL who talks exactly about that. How I think she was from the Middle East. I need to have these names for you. Let me see if I can look it up right quick. Let me see. Blueberry, Normal LOL. Because if you're really into listening to long form stuff, I got some good stuff for you. But while I'm looking it up, though, yeah, she talks about how she's from another culture basically, and how she came over here and was conditioned and indoctrinated to learn medicine and medical practices from their perspective. And she said something very profound actually, and what she said was, not only are you learning, the Euro cultures, lens of things to look through, you also are basically slowly stripped of your own cultural practices and observations and things that you've been defining yourself, since a child based upon your culture. Like it's just stripped from you. So it was, yeah, it was really profound to hear her say that. And it's episode 61, holistic practices, children on meds and discontinuing meds, with Dr. Tamar Lavy. Episode 61 on Normal LOL, right? So yeah, that stuff's really powerful. Let's get back to it. I feel like there was something else I was about to say, but I can't remember what the other thing I was going to say. But I will say one thing that keeps coming back to my mind that I do want to put out there, which is something that was said by Dr. Sabi in an interview or a lecture he was doing. And what he said was, you won't find a polar bear in Africa. You won't find a polar bear in Africa. And, of course, when he was saying it, he was talking about dietary practices. But that same example covers That covers everything. It covers everything. I think there's this perspective sometimes that just because a handful of quote unquote black people have made it and are successful, that everybody should be able to be successful. And that's not true. It's just because, and first of all, keep in mind, a lot of, I don't know the percentage, but a lot of people, a lot of quote unquote black people are rewarded. And in being rewarded, that helps to maintain the system and uphold the system of um, colonialism, capitalism. One might even call it oppression, whatever the case may be. Like, these people are, a lot of these people are rewarded. And then there are some that are just, they make it through, the sift, for lack of words. But that doesn't mean the entire culture is supposed to like get it and it's supposed to be able to connect and put on this costume and wear it with pride. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not how this goes. So going back to that example about the polar bear, one might argue, well, the polar bear has been able to live um, in another climate for a long time, so it should be all right. I'm gonna tell you one thing: the polar bear is always gonna yearn to go back home. The polar bear belongs where it belongs. All right, like just because the zoo animals over here don't mean they belong over here. I mean, I've had my moments and times in my life, in my journey, or whatever, going to the zoo and finding a bit of bliss and going to see these animals in this state and habitat, and then you mature and get a little older and evolve or whatever, and you find out, okay, no, this is another form of captivity. And now, I can understand, some animal is ill or something like that, broken wing, no wings or something like that, just can't make it. And even then, that's arguably subjective because the cycle of life says either you need to be here or you don't need to be here, whatever the case may be. But I say all that to say that, just because we've been able to adapt to a certain environment for so long doesn't still doesn't mean that we belong over here. Especially when you have a spirit and you have a genetic code within you, within your genetics and your bloodline that yearns to be home, home, home. Whether it's in the Americas, whether it's in Africa, whatever the case may be. Polar bear is supposed to be where the polar bear is supposed to be. And I co-sign on that. And as soon as I said it, I was like, I know somebody's probably like, well, animals have migrated and changed and stuff like that. I'm not gonna argue with you about that. That is true. That is true. But not all animals. The point I'm making in that is just not all animals. Not all animals. Let's keep moving. Um yeah. We think let me expand it a little bit. All right. We think what we are seeing in the story of the shaman and schizophrenia is the work of culture. Schizophrenia is a continuum. Some are better able to function, some less able, and the severity of the illness waxes and wanes across the decades. People with schizophrenia have other capabilities as well, also likely unevenly distributed across individuals. Among them, the capacity to imagine and the capacity to go into trance. In social worlds where there is an identity in which hearing voices is normal, and practices which teach people how to distance themselves from negative voices and develop relationships with positive voices. The work of culture may allow some people with schizophrenia like experiences to experience less severe illness and function effectively in the world. The work of culture includes representation, but above all, it involves practice, repeatedly talking to those voices in ways that insist that the voice is a social person in a social relationship who has a social responsibility to the human who hears. Mm, mm, mm. That was powerful. That was powerful. I'm going to say that one more time. This is the last couple of sentences. The work of culture includes representation, but above all, it involves practice, repeatedly talking to those voices in ways that insist that the voice is a social person in a social relationship who has a social responsibility to the human who hears. Let me tell you why that resonates with me in particular. When I was dealing with psychosis in 20 starts in 2013, at the end of 2013 is when the dissociation and the schizophrenia started in real heavy. This illusionary state of mind. I used to call it delirium when it first started. I'm like feeling like some type of delirium or something like that. And it was later on where I would find that it was called derealization, depersonalization, dissociative identity disorder. So all that wherein lies a lot of different stuff, and one of those things was voices. And yes, there was a point in time where I was hearing some very dark voices, and you feel possessed when you're going through this particular subset of psychosis. You feel like something is making you do things. You don't feel like you're moving your body. You feel like something else is moving your body. You are literally on the outside watching your body move by itself, and it's so weird at times, all the time, all the fucking time. Um, yeah, and this and it wasn't even a voice all the time. It was sometimes it was a nudge. It was a um, what's the word? There's a word I usually have for it, but it was a um, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But it was a nudge, almost like you're being pushed, not with the hand necessarily, but something's pushing you, or I would call it a gravitational pull to something to do some very harmful things under the umbrella of suicide or homicide. It was a wild ride. And I'll get more into specifics on another episode if I haven't already on the podcast platform. Go check it out, Normal LOL. But I say all that to say that at some point, at some point, I learned to have a powerful voice that superseded, that was more superior, more was bigger than the other voice. And it took time, and it took practice and repetition. But you don't know it until you've gone through it. But when you're in the beginning phases, you just think you're going crazy, and you really do believe you have the desire and conviction to do certain things, which is where meds come in that can be very helpful or extremely harmful, and even more harmful if you're on meds and you just jump off of it without doing what's appropriate as far as decreasing it in a very wise and intelligent and responsible manner. So when I read something like that regarding responsibility of the individual to get to know the voice and challenge the voice and give it its responsibilities, like it's powerful because it's true, you know. When I think about all these different conditions that they put under the umbrella of umbrella, like it is a walk of passage. It's a rite of passage. It takes time. It takes time. And even more important, one of many variables with it taking time is the right people around you to help you through this, because you can get through it. But again, this pain is subjective. This pain is subjective. The mental illness is not real for black people. Maybe. What does he say above that though? I want to see. Mm, yeah. Benedict's deepest insight was the subjective experience. Excuse me. Benedict's deepest insight was that subjective experience was pathoplastic. We're going to look that word up. Pathoplastic. That symptoms would acquire a specific form and content as they were shaped by events in a person's life. I guess that's what pathoplastic means. Culture, she thought, did not have the power to completely alter subjective experience. To use another of her famous examples, someone who was sexually attracted to someone of the same sex would not necessarily find that the pattern of their sexual attraction was altered by their cultural location. but the local culture could profoundly alter the way someone felt about their orientation, and that could change everything for them. So when I first read that, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, but that makes more sense now, actually. Psychiatric science has been relatively open to the idea that culture shapes the content of psychotic symptoms. In a medieval world, someone with schizophrenia could hear demons and angels, while in a modern one, they might hear robots. That's bad. That's bad. And when I say bad, I mean I'm talking about that's deep, man. Because yeah, I feel like that's probably going to be a thing for sure as we continue to evolve and move forward in this digital robotic reality of sorts, especially from a multidimensional perspective. The radical core of Benedict's insight is that these differences in content might affect emotional meaning so deeply that the person might not even experience themselves as ill. Read that one more time. The radical core of Benedict's insight is that these differences in content might affect emotional meaning so deeply that the person might not even experience themselves as ill. In a deeply biomedical era, which has tended to assume that schizophrenia can only be treated by medication, this could be a very important lesson for us to relearn. And that is it. That's it on the conclusion. That's powerful, man. That's powerful. Yeah, all this stripping, all this stripping. At the end of the day, it's not about what I think or how I feel. I mean, for me, it is as far as my truth is concerned, because my truth is my truth. But as far as your truth is concerned, and, if you're watching this, especially if you've been watching all three of these and you're in right now this deep, you've been asking questions, you've been wondering, you've been just trying to figure out like what is it about me? What is it about um how I see this world, how I feel that makes me feel a certain way inside? So you already know something. You already know something doesn't make sense, or as they say, the math ain't math, and you already know. And that's where the stripping comes into place. But it's up to you to ultimately determine and measure, um, the importance of how you utilize these words and these labels, for sure. Let's go to. I'm gonna wrap this up in a second. I'm gonna wrap this up in a second. As usual, shout out again. I like to always, as long as I'm remembering, give much respect to Malidoma Somé, who is one of the ones that really assisted along with the ancestors, along with so many other spirits involved, man, putting me on track to do exactly what it is that I'm doing now, feel the way that I'm feeling. My trajectory regarding this thing that they call a disease um, was man, it was fascinating. It was fascinating, and to do it all alone, um, I didn't go to any therapy. I did take meds at one point, and when I say at one point, I'm talking about a month. And I was like, nope, 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 not for me, not for me. It was this a fascinating journey and adventure of sorts. I don't know if you want to call it an adventure. Some people, but I've learned that these things look different to everybody. They look different to everybody. Um, yeah, let's go a little further. They're doing something with names. Sheila, Charles, Hannah. I'm just gonna read a little bit of this. I don't know how to read all of this, but let's see if it gets interesting enough to finish the whole thing. But we'll start right here. And thank you for joining me on this abstract lecture. I'm glad you like to learn. Glad you love to learn. I'm about to break these up into clips though at some point. It's gonna be so much work. The puzzle. We begin with a major assumption that schizophrenia and schizophreniform psychosis exist on a continuum. Some people are much more ill than others, but not that, excuse me, but that not all hallucination-like experiences are in fact expressions of schizophreniform psychosis or indeed of psychosis at all. Phew. Psychosis is typically understood in the psychiatric literature as a condition in which someone has thoughts or perceptions which are radically at odds with normally accepted understandings of what is real. Many psychiatric conditions can involve some degree of psychosis, among them bipolar disorder, psychotic depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, and reactions to many drugs. Schizophrenia is a disorder which includes psychosis. Excuse me. Includes psychosis. The nosologist Emil Kraepelin famously distinguished it from bipolar on the basis of its downward and deteriorating course. Despite hesitations about this claim, the person with bipolar disorder is presumed to cycle through periods of sometimes psychotic mania and depression, but to return to normal functioning between these periods. The person with schizophrenia is often presumed never to return to baseline functioning, even though within one person's life there are periods in which the psychosis is more pronounced. Schizophrenia is also associated with tangential, tangential, somewhat incoherent speech and with impoverished facial expressions, usually called flat affect. It is also associated with striking cognitive disorganization, sometimes due to distractions or frequent hallucinations, but often not. It is not uncommon for persons who develop schizophrenia to experience their first psychotic episode in their late teens, particularly if they are male. So this is really just, in a lengthy way defining different variations and perspectives of schizophrenia. I don't think it's necessary to go into that, as this is not about really defining schizophrenia, but more so about defining other alternative perspectives of schizophrenia. Um, yeah, and one thing was really interesting in that being said regarding uh, not returning back to a form or baseline. What I will say is you never go back to whoever that person was. And that's part of the problem sometimes is that when these conditions start, people really are thriving and striving and attempting rather to become that person, because a lot of times you might have been this strong person, confidence, full of love and joy, full of, you just had, if not all the answers, most of the answers, right? And people will say that. And people told me that. Like, what happened to you? You was, you were so strong. I couldn't even live on my own at one point. I couldn't even sleep with the lights off at one point. You know what I'm saying? So that's the baseline. The baseline is who you are before it actually happens. That's the baseline. I learned that I shouldn't try to go back to be that person. I read this article one time that talked about depression. And to paraphrase, it said, sometimes one of the best places to be is in a place where you are nothing and have nothing so that you can start all over again. Now, I've been blessed, 'cause I don't believe in luck, but I've been blessed to reproduce and reimagine and recreate myself over and over again. It was funny, just a sidebar. I'm looking at my ID. I went to go get some alcohol, wine, or whatever a few days ago. I was at the store. And of course, they asked for your ID. And I give him my ID. This ID is from 2017, I think. And he looks at the ID and he looks at me. He looks back at the ID and he looks at me. And I'm kind of like, about to catch an attitude, but I know what's going on. But I'm like, Negro, I am old enough probably to be, you know. But I'm like, is there a problem? And he's like, your locks, man. What's this picture in 2017? Like, I have this blonde. I used to dye my beard. It's blonde, and I'm bald. bald, bald, bald. I look nothing like that person, right? That was funny, but I like recreating myself. It's strange. Like it's like every 2, 3, 5 years, typically probably 2 or 3 years. It's not a schedule. I don't make an appointment to do it. It just happens. It's that's my growth. That's my continuum. So when it came to me that I needed to make these adjustments and not try to go back to who I was like, oh, okay, well I can do that. And it took a while, but it took a lot of reintroducing myself to new stimuli, doing new things, becoming a whole new person, adopting a whole new set of lens in which to look out of, right? So you know I'm saying this thing because like I've said all this stuff on my podcast, but I'm expressing these things to express that I learned at a certain point in time that it it didn't fit. It didn't fit the puzzle, not the puzzle, but it didn't fit what they were saying. Their definition of, certain labels and words regarding mental illness didn't fit how I felt. It didn't fit how I wanted to perceive it, how I wanted to alter it and what I felt um what I felt I needed to do and how I needed to go about doing it. Their model didn't fit for me. And I had to change that. And it really happened early on, even though I was still in shambles, I was distraught. It was terrifying. It was terrifying. But it was really early on though. It was pretty early on that I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is what they say it is, you know? Now illness is subjective. It's subjective, right? Illness is subjective. And even then, I still think it deserves another word based upon your own cultural tongue. Whether it's that word, whether it's the word sickness, whether it's the word health, whatever the case may be, like it deserves your own word, your own essence, your own energy, your own frequency, your own sound, whatever the case may be, your own symbol, sigil, symbols, whatever. It deserves your own stuff. Because again, that gives you the ability to control how it looks and how it feels in the long run. Okay, as opposed to adopting other people's perspectives and behaviors. So that's going to do it for this particular abstract lecture episode regarding mental illness is not real for the melanated peoples. Maybe. Um, I want you to do some homework. I want you to challenge yourself. Really, like really dig deep in and challenge yourself based upon what you might have gone through. If you're watching this and you've dealt with a mental illness, if you're watching this and you're dealing with a mental illness, if you're just trying to get education on what all this is all about, so just in case it happens to you or your loved ones, a different perspective, like I want you to do some homework. I want you to do some homework and challenging like your feelings and emotions. And I want you to dive deep into yourself, dive deep into yourself and come to your own conclusions with what it is that you're going through and be willing to go beyond what this structure and system has given you. Go beyond the meds, go beyond the doctors and the therapists. Now obviously if it's critical, if it's crucial, look, I ain't I ain't saying don't go to the doctor. If you're feeling a certain type of way, go see a doctor or a therapist immediately. Call 911. All the information is out there. I ain't saying go try to do all this on your own. It's not easy. I would never encourage anybody to do it on your own. But for individuals that are not in a extreme critical state of mind, altered state of mind or disorder regarding moods or emotions and energy, etc., stuff like that, I challenge you, yeah, take some time and like really delve into educating yourself on other perspectives and ways to look at these things. And if you're somebody who's really been reconnecting and diving deeper into like evolving your consciousness and your conscious state of mind, then you know what tribe are you from? What's your nationality? What's your bloodline? And even if you don't know all those things, what do you feel you connect to? Do you connect to the Americas? Do you connect to Africa? Locate a tribe that you gravitate to and you feel connected to, and see what their practices are regarding their diet, regarding their exercise, regarding their mental health practices, regarding educational practices, regarding their spiritual practices. Yeah, do some homework. All right, y'all. Peace, y'all. That's gonna do it for this lecture. Normal LOL podcast. Normal LOL is the blog. What else? Cash App, El Rico Ramon, El Rico Ramon at hotmail.com is my email. El Rico Ramon Worlds is IG. And yeah, I think that's going to conclude this particular article, this particular study. We're going to do something different next time. I think we're going to dive into the labels and words, and we're going to go beyond that regarding the origins. You guys take care, and peace and light.